Marketing has to start with your strategy. Who are you going after? What platforms are you going to advertise on? How much are you going to spend? How often are you going to post? You have to come up with just good, sound strategy for your marketing. Don't just advertise on Meta for a week and then turn it off, not do anything for 3 months, and then turn it on for a week and not advertise for 6 months and then turn it on for a week. You might as well just choose a different medium like TV or direct mail that is instant. If they could get each of those people in another time over the next 18, 24 months, each and every one of them, their businesses would definitely grow. Meta and these social media platforms are like a wave. They're not like TV. If you advertise on TV, everybody instantly is seeing that ad, right? In real time, right then. That's not how Meta works.
Mr. Kody Fitzjerrells, so good to have you here on the Footwear Retailer today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Pete. I really appreciate you thinking of me and Omni Digital, and very excited to share with footwear retailers today what we're all about.
Yeah, you're the founder of Omni Digital Group, and you've been helping footwear retailers for many years now. And we've met each other through a variety of different trade shows and at the NSRA events, a variety of different things along the way. So we've known each other for several years. And I wanted to have you come on because I know you do a lot of work with footwear retailers, and it's your biggest market, isn't it, for Omni?
Yeah, it's a funny story too, how we got working with footwear retailers. It was actually my first ever client when I founded Omni Digital Group. We're coming up on 8 years in business in just over a month.
Awesome.
And it was a footwear retailer. Got to give them a shout out. And they're members of the NSRA. But Kevin with Brown Shoe Fit Company out of Dubuque, Iowa, with Brown Shoe Fit Co. as the corporate. So yeah, just a kind of, and I didn't know too much about shoes, but now 8 years later have learned a ton about the footwear industry and marketing for footwear retailers. So it's actually been really fun. Like, genuinely enjoy working with footwear retailers. And yeah, that's the bulk of the clients that we work with is in the footwear industry.
Yeah, I know you serve a lot of run stores too. You serve comfort stores. It's really, and you serve people outside of the footwear industry too, but give them a little bit, just, we're going to dig down into it, but from a 30,000 foot view, what does Omni do, Kody?
Yeah. So from a macro lens, we're a marketing company. And really within marketing, we focus on three primary areas. And we've kind of actually recently gone through a huge rebrand and kind of coined ourselves because, there's 1,000,001 marketing firms out there. And the way we've kind of coined ourselves, and it actually just got trademarked a couple of days ago, which is we are your company's growth engine. And what I mean by that is, what is an engine? Well, an engine is a physical thing. It has to have fuel. You have to put heat over it to, cause it to go, that type of thing. And that's the way we feel we are as a marketing company. So we break it down into three key areas. First of all, marketing has to start with your strategy. Who are you going after? What platforms are you going to advertise on? How much are you going to spend? How often are you going to post? You have to come up with just good, sound strategy for your marketing. Number two, that I think most companies, whether it's marketing or the retailers directly, really overlook is data. Marketing today is just as much a data thing as it is, a platform as far as TV or Facebook or email. You have to have quality data. And we could get into some stats of how I think that's probably the biggest opportunity for a lot of retailers, footwear or not. And then number three that we focus on is creative. So you have to have high quality graphics and video assets to be able to put in front of that strategy, that target person, targeting them appropriately with the data, and then just causing them to take an action through the graphic or video. And we have a team of 19 total individuals on staff, from data scientists to videographers to strategists, to be able to help clients with their marketing. But those are really the big three areas that we'll focus on with the retailer. Quite frankly, any business. It doesn't matter if you're a service business, it's those three things. So just to show the importance, I think, of those three things is we work with financial services companies, jewelry stores, e-commerce brands, footwear. Like, it really doesn't matter. Those are the big three things that I would recommend any business to focus on.
So, so many independent shoe store owners struggle with marketing. And that's why I wanted to have you on, as that's your life revolving around all that stuff. And What
Yeah.
should they be doing to develop some strong, actionable marketing strategies? Let's pull apart these three different pillars that you just outlined.
Yeah, I think one that I think is often a little bit overlooked is, let's just start from a macro level.
Yeah.
Where is your target customer? I'll give you an example. We were talking with one of our larger clients a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about their general strategy for 2025. And to give you an idea, which this will sound like a lot, but they spend over $600,000 a year on marketing. So it's a pretty good sized company.
Yep.
And they were wanting to push more on Instagram and TikTok within regards to a younger customer base,
Hmm.
which no doubt, I think any business should be putting a percentage of their budget, towards a younger consumer base. But when it comes to the footwear space, especially for the comfort space and even running, the running industry to a certain extent, majority of their customer base is about a 40 to 60-year-old individual. Those individuals are on, OTT, they're on TV, direct mail, Meta, what we specialize in. They're not really on as much Instagram and TikTok. So what I recommended the client is definitely take a percentage of your budget, but it shouldn't be the lion's share of going to acquire new customers in this age demographic. And I think that that's one of the starting places I would recommend to any retailer is, where is your target audience at? The age, the gender, the demographic, the interests, that type of information. I think another very important thing to think about is budget, and then therefore kind of a sub thing below budget is, how far does that get you? $1,000 or $2,000 on Meta gets you a lot longer than $1,000 on direct mail, say, as far as just the number of people that see it. Doesn't mean that direct mail isn't effective, or TV, or any medium. I always tell our clients, how well does it work, not does it work? Because if you do advertising effectively, I don't care if it's TikTok or TV or Meta or texting, it's going to work, and it should work if you're doing it properly. I think then the final thing, besides just your demographic, who you're targeting, and your budget, is just, where are you going to spend based on that budget? And that's definitely probably an entire podcast in of itself, just breaking down different mediums. But I think I heard a quote the other day, and this really, really resonated with me. And it wasn't even really a marketing firm, but they talked about share of mind versus share of market. And share of mind is just, let's take what I would recommend. Very tactical thing here is to advertise around a 5 to 10 mile radius of your store. Actually, one of the NSRA members told me one time that I think it was something like 80% of their customer database from their point of sale system came from the very zip code that their store was in. So let's say that that's true, 80% the zip code, right? But then what percentage of the zip code do you have? That would be your share of market. Share of mind is, okay, if you're advertising to 100% of those people, let's say theoretically, and you have 10% of that zip code is shopped at your store, 100% of mind, 10% of market. How do you get that percent of market up, and how do you then analyze that, which we'll go to in a second with the data side. But I think those are the big three things I would focus on: is your budget, who you're placing the ads in front of, and then the platforms that allow you to do those things cost effectively, where you're getting a solid return, and things like that.
One of my marketing mentors, his name's Dean Jackson. He's just an
Yeah.
awesome, awesome guy.
Yeah.
So Dean Jackson, at least this is where I heard it from. Pretty sure he coined it, but he calls it being 5 mile famous.
Mm,
And I love this idea of being 5 mile famous. So
that's
when you're 5 mile famous around the radius of your store or stores, that you need to own that market. And then
yeah.
outside of that, you're against the world. You're against everybody out there, because it becomes digital then. I'm
Yeah.
kind of framing this up to ask you the question of, how much is the average person these days spending in that sort of, whether it's 5 mile famous or 10 mile famous, but let's
Yeah.
call it the zone, the
Yeah.
local zone,
Yeah.
versus advertising out there to the ether, where everybody's can hop on our website and buy whatever it is we're offering on our web store.
Yeah, such a good question. And I wonder, almost asking the audience listening to this, are you basically dominating your 5 mile radius around your store? Because we work with a pretty large retailer in the footwear space that has 3 locations, and they basically, we've worked with them for years, so we were kind of with them before they had a website, and then they got a website and in an e-commerce, a shop. Well, they've had a website for years and years and years,
Yeah.
but they were building out their e-commerce site for probably close to a year, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden they like were like, why are we doing this? Like it was like 2% of their revenue, and they were spending. Yeah, I'm not even going to make up an expense percentage, but
Yeah.
it was only 2% of their revenue. They then shut it down to be more of a pre-shopping tool, right? Where you couldn't buy anything, you could see all their selection, you could see all their goods, all that type of stuff. And I think they kind of, I would kind of call it shiny object syndrome. Certainly not telling people to not have an e-commerce site, but I think you just have to be realistic with what percentage of your revenue it's going to come from. And then going back to that share of market, if the whole footwear purchasing dollars of your market is, $50 million and you're a $2 million store, well, you've got about, what is that, 8% of your market or whatever that number is, 10%. So, I think you just have to think about it logically in regards to, the e-com side. And then I remember a stat years ago from the NSRA that kind of blew me away. And I think it blew Mark Denkler away, the president of the NSRA, which was the business reports stating that the firms in there, the retailers spent 1.1% of their revenue on marketing.
Mm.
Where I'm a nerd. I read a lot of 10K reports of a lot of companies because I find them
Yeah.
pretty fascinating. And if you look at companies like Lululemon, or let's take Decker Brands that owns Hoka, they
Yeah.
spend about 6.5% of their revenue on marketing. So if you're getting outspent 600% roughly against a D2C company, even in your local market, it's going to be hard to compete, right? Because their ads are getting seen by some of the eyeballs in your local spot. So you have to your point, which is very well said. I'm going to steal that from Dean Jackson. Is you have to become 5 mile famous, which on a 5 mile radius for any of the retailers listening to this, I don't even care if you live in a massive city. It's not going to be that many people. So you're not going to have to spend an arm and a leg. But I think that 5 mile radius for brand new customers, I think is a very solid targeting radius for Google, for Meta, other social media platforms, potentially TV. I mean, potentially you could go, more broad, direct mail, you could go more broad. But I think if you can dominate that 5 mile radius, I think that's a great recommendation for sure.
Yeah, it's just one of the things that both of our stores are in small towns.
Mm,
And so when we look at that, if you went out on a 5 mile radius, we pretty much are encapsulating the bulk of the population within the
yeah.
town itself and then some of the environment around. But definitely we want to be owning that zone. The next piece is, if you get to that zone, then it's like, okay, increase that radius from 5 to 10. And
Yep.
then, the other piece of the puzzle that I'm always interested in is the tracking of this sort of stuff and looking, it's like, okay, well, are we able to, put that back into our recurring clients, whether it be on our email list, whether it be in our point of sale system. And, everybody uses different point of sale systems, different email trackers, all this kind of stuff. But whatever it is for you, and I'm talking to you, the listener, how are you looking at all this stuff and how it comes back into play? And is it making the door ring? One of the things we've experienced here in the last few months, Kody, is that our door counts are down, our door counts. And for me, as we do sell online, but the majority of our business is coming in the store, and our conversion rates are good. The variety of, our sales, we're converting properly. Our average tickets are good. Like all of the typical metrics that you would look at are in good spot for our sales team and all that kind of stuff. The
Mhm.
biggest piece is getting people in the door. And in these times right now, our stores are in Canada, lots of stuff going on. There's lots of talk in the political spins of tariffs and all sorts of different things that are happening. I mean, what happens in the States definitely has a trickle effect of what happens in Canada as well. And people are uncertain and people are holding on to their wallet and they're not traveling into the stores as much. And there's a variety of different things on what are we going to do to continue this methodology to bring people in the door within that 5 mile radius. And that's one of the things we're always working on. If you were coaching me along the way, what would you say to somebody like me who needs to get that door ringing a little bit more and get, 5 or 10 more % of people back up to where we were last year?
Yeah, I'll give you a stat. So we need to update it, but this has been 2 years ago. but we looked at 30 of our clients, all
Yeah.
footwear retailers.
Yeah.
It was a million total consumers. 59.25% of those million people had only shopped one time at our client's store. So I think one of the, in all of retail, not just footwear, but definitely footwear, because the frequency of purchase is a little bit higher than, say, the jewelry industry, right?
Mm.
So when you look at those one time purchasers, just, the first big action item from this is advertise on Meta, Google would be the big two, and you can do it, fairly cheap on a 5 mile radius of your store.
Yeah.
Step two with that is go to your point of sale system, download your customer database from your POS, no matter which one you have. Most of them, I'm sure you can download, at least to a CSV. At least get that phone number and email and first name. That's the minimum information you need in columns, and upload that to Facebook. Facebook will then match those people to a Facebook and Instagram to profile, and you can begin advertising to those people. It's really that simple. And then the second recommendation, kind of a sub bullet to that I would have, is I read this in the company, believe it or not, they own Zales, K, and another giant jewelry store. They have over 1,500 locations. They
Wow.
called it in their marketing always on. My question to retailers is like that let's use Kevin from Brown Shoe Fit in Dubuque. He has been advertising with us on Meta for 8 years. It's about 7 years, 355 days, because we turn 8 here in a couple weeks, times 365. So eight, let's just take 8 times 365. That's how many days in a row he's been advertising on Meta. And his store is pretty big. And my question is, so probably the single biggest mistake, Pete, and this one, I could teach a masterclass on this. This one drives me bonkers, truly, is, let me break it down for you. Meta and these social media platforms are like a wave. They're not like TV. If you advertise on TV, let's say during the Super Bowl, everybody instantly is seeing that ad, right? In real
Yeah.
time, right then. That's not how Meta works. They're auction-based systems that show impressions over time. It's a wave effect. So what I mean by that is there are so many retailers. If you take nothing else away from this podcast, please hear me on this. Don't just advertise on Meta for a week and then turn it off, not do anything for 3 months, and then turn it on for a week, and not advertise for 6 months and then turn it on for a week. You might as well just choose a different medium like TV or direct mail that is instant, right? If you want that instant gratification, and we're a Meta only company, don't even advertise on Meta. Choose a medium if you're going to be, give and go like that, that is a little bit more like the TV ad. It's all in real time right then, and everybody sees it that's watching TV. That's just not how Meta works. So that's definitely a hack that I see. And here's another fact for you. If you look at, Meta did a study a couple years ago, only 1% of all companies, and this would be another kind of benchmark thing for like your stores, Pete, or anybody
Yeah.
listening to this, 99 or only 1% of retailers on Meta run 11 or more ads. So if you run 11 ads, you are in the top 1% of all Meta advertisers. You do that on a 5 mile radius, and you do that towards your point of sale data, the 59% of people that have only shopped with you one time. I mean, think about that. If a retailer has 30,000 people, let's just cut that in half for the sake of an example, 15,000 times 175 average order value. I'm not super good with math off the top of my head, but that's a pretty big number, right? And
Yeah.
I think most retailers, if they could get each of those people in, another time over the next 18, 24 months, each and every one of them, their businesses would definitely grow. And I think so many of our customers, in to our first point on the 5 mile radius, we want them to be focused on new customers. But you think about, right, let's expand this out a bit. If you were targeting brand new customers on a 30 mile radius in like your towns, Pete, and just
Mhm.
think about this logically, it's going to be a lot more people than 5 miles, right? You're going
Yeah.
to have to spend more money because it's more people on a 30 mile radius.
Exactly.
But if you were to target your existing customers, so you have new on a 5 mile radius, Your existing could go out 20, 30, 40, 50 because you're limiting in scope, in theory, those 30,000 people that you say would upload. It's only going to be at most, and it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 10 to 20,000, probably. So that's not that many people for social media. When I say a lot of people, it's usually 100,000 or more. On Meta is a lot. I would
Yep.
classify that as, and we can, say that maybe for a different podcast, but targeting your existing customers on a broader radius would be my recommendation. And target your new customers on a tighter radius, especially if your budget is tight or you want to limit it on Meta and spend other places, which I completely understand. It's just that new customers at 5, existing I put at 40 to 50 miles because if somebody shopped with you before,
Yeah.
they'll
They'll
drive,
travel.
20, 30, 40, 50 miles. So yeah.
I think that's awesome. I love the idea of go with a larger radius for the existing because you already have they've been in your store. If they've been in your store, they get it, they understand it. And the opportunity for them to come back in the door is, one of the things that we always have to be in people's minds.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things a lot of people talk about how they don't find email a valuable component to marketing these days. And I think email is awesome personally, because my philosophy behind that is really that they may not open your email every time, but they know you're there. And even though I'm excited, like I'm not sure what industry standards, you probably know more than I do about email open rates, but our email open rates are typically in the high 40s, and
Right.
we've got a fairly substantial email list. And I feel as though we're getting good open rates on our emails.
That
But
is
even if I wasn't getting good open, just having it there, and when they are ready, then they're going to raise their hand, right? Then they're going to open that email and they're going to say, okay, I'm ready for my next pair of boots. I'm ready for my next pair of sandals. I'm going to open this one. But the idea is, if you weren't in that email box every week
Yeah.
or however often is your normal rhythm to send your emails,
Yeah.
when they are ready, somebody else will be in the inbox and they'll open that one. I want them to open mine when they're ready.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And it's not exactly why I called the company Omni Digital Group, but you have to be omnipresent, right? You
Yeah.
can't just we're a firm that specializes in meta, in email, and text, but there is
Yeah.
certainly a place for direct mail, OTT,
For sure.
Google, certainly, YouTube. And you have to be everywhere. And I think if you can afford it as a retailer, you can't get too dependent on one. I mean, obviously who knows what'll happen with it. And probably good majority of the retailers on here probably don't advertise on it. They may do organic, but it's TikTok, right? If
Mhm.
Meta just went away tomorrow, even myself as the owner, I'd be like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting, but that it's not going to last forever. And here's the other interesting thing, Pete, is I don't know how they've done it truly. But when I look at the cost per 1,000 impressions, that's how TikTok, Snapchat, Meta, Google, that's how they all charge you is per 1,000
Mhm.
impressions.
Yeah.
Meta's has gone up like maybe 20% in the 8 years I've been doing it. They've kept it so steady. Can you say the same thing out of TV? Can you say the same thing out of radio? Can you say the same thing out of paper, direct mail? Those things have probably doubled, if not tripled, in the last 8 years, let alone 20%. So I think it's really just looking at how can you have a little sampling of it all, right? If you look at direct mail, maybe use direct mail for your top customers, right? Because you definitely want to ensure that you're getting their business returned. Use Meta maybe for your new customer acquisition and use email for your existing. Right there would be a nice 3-prong approach for strategy that allows you to target different people on pretty cost effective bases that would probably lead to some pretty substantial business growth. If, kind of to my prior point, it's done consistently. And to your point, you're probably not going to get high 40s open rate if you're only sending one email every quarter. It's going to, you're probably very consistent in your businesses if you're getting, those type of open rates, which is awesome.
I think we could do another whole podcast on just email, but the idea, we're not sending to every customer every email that we send out. We're making
Oh,
sure that they're going to the ones that they're supposed to go to. And that's one of the
yeah.
reasons we have, I think, higher open rates, because we're really looking and pulling you talked about the 3 pillars, right? Strategy, energy data of your actual
Yes, absolutely.
product that you're sending out there, the marketing pieces.
Yeah.
But from that data, it's like, let's dig into the data. Why would I send the latest release of a Keen utility boot to a lady who's never bought utility boots in her history with us? Or why would we send the latest fashion heel to a guy who's only bought utility boots from us? So just some basic things like that really help to hone the message. And you can start creating these micro messages. So if you mentioned 30,000 emails, you've got 30,000 emails. Well, maybe only 7 of those 1,000 have bought a New Balance shoe from you. So if you're putting out your New Balance package, maybe you want to send it to everybody, but maybe you don't. Maybe you want to cater one to ladies who have bought only the running packages from you. And that's where we're pulling data and
Yeah.
looking at how can we craft these messages so we'll get higher interest and open rate, so that they either are going to go ahead and click the website, find out, do that shopping before they come into the store, or shop it and buy it and have it delivered to their door. That's fine. But, in our case, a lot of the times they'll come in, they'll say, oh, I got your email. I looked at it on the website. This is the one I'm looking for. I know you have it in the store because it said on your website, it's at this store, not at the other one, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So I'm here to try it on. And if all of the selling can be done for you before they eat, like when they literally walk in and say, I want that New Balance 880 in the white color in an 8B, boy, that's kind of nice to have that all pre-done for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you an example too. And again, I think it's so critical to have mediums where you're reaching people where they want to be met. Is Shoe Carnival in their annual report. One of the probably the most used word in their marketing section of their report was personalization.
Yeah.
Right, because to your point, they probably have the safety toe to the women's fashion to the athletics. Actually, athletics was their fastest growing segment, like it is in majority of the spaces.
A lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just segment between your boots, your ladies' fashion, men's fashion, and athletics for ladies' men's, there you go. There's a solid strategy. Then that's not that hard to do. You just download that from your point of sale, upload it, kind of do some segmenting, and you're off to the races. And I think to your point, it's going to lead to higher open rates. It's going to lead to less unsubscribes. And let's just call it too, it's just a great experience for the consumer. It's highly personalized, highly relevant to them. And people can feel that, right? Because whether they logically understand how it happens, which probably they're not thinking that deeply about it, but you are as a business owner. And that's just a good customer experience. If somebody came in and they were asking for a Keen utility boot, and you're like, "Yeah, let me take you over to the ladies' fashion section," they'd be like, "TV time out here. I asked for the Keen utility." Like it's just kind of like that's a bad experience in store. But why are you doing it with your email? So it's a good point.
It's an interesting thing, and before we sort of go on to talk a little bit about content and
Yeah,
stuff like that,
yeah,
you had mentioned unsubscribes. And
yeah,
so many of my clients, whether in the footwear industry here or elsewhere, are always concerned about unsubscribes.
yeah.
And I have my own thoughts on that. I'm interested to know what yours are.
Yeah, I think I mean this half facetiously, but I think the higher the unscribe rate, the better. Because that means that the people that are staying on actually want to hear from you. And you don't want a high unsubscribe rate. But the major point is you want to find a balance between frequency and a lack of frequency. My opinion on it is like we have a client not in the footwear space, but we have a client that we send an email out for, and I'm just heavily involved with it every single Thursday at the exact same time. That's also a recommendation I would make is make it like if you're going to do a consistent email, like say once a week, make it at the exact same time. We've been doing that now for probably about a year and a half, 3 p.m. on Thursdays. I'm sure people like get used to like seeing that. I haven't, and now that I think out loud about it, I haven't actually looked at that data, but like I bet you they probably do because it's very consistent. But I would recommend minimum of once per week. So you're sending 52 emails a year, very solid frequency. And, it may take 5 to 10 emails if you haven't done it in a while to get that train, really get those wheels moving. But once you send 5 to 10, you're going to be just fine. And sending one email a week would probably take you an hour total between creating it on Canva or hiring somebody internally or, going on, Upwork or something like that, to have somebody design it. But I think that ultimately just get to once per week is big.
With your creating side of things, we've got strategy, we've got data,
Yeah.
getting into creation,
Yeah.
and whether it be social posts, whether it be email, whether, all of the different things that we create in our business. What are you seeing? Where are the trends that you're seeing are actually hitting and making a difference for the footwear retailer these days?
Yeah, so I'll give you I think it's a great book I recommend outside of, as you know, EOS with Traction, my recommendation to business owners. My probably second recommended book, and I don't even know what my third would be. That's how good these two are, is Traction, but then it's They Ask, You Answer. It is a game changer. I will give you two examples, Pete, that are not in the footwear space. One client of ours has grown from 65,000 a month in revenue last April with the strategy I'll outline in a second. I just checked this morning. In the last 30 days, they've done 281 revenue.
Wow.
And it's in a pretty high margin business. So they're making some money. And then the other one has gone from about 150,000, 2.5 years of working with them, to over 600,000. So they've 6x
Amazing.
since working with us. And we work with these two clients on a very, very deep basis. The strategy we've implemented from a content perspective is They Ask, You Answer. So let me kind of break it down. It's essentially answering the questions in video format that your customers have about your product or service. So for the footwear, I could give you 20 examples. Let's give you like two, right? Make a video on the major difference between a high arch and a low arch shoe and run that on a 5 mile radius of your store. There's one idea. Go make it. Literally record yourself in your store. Click the boost button on Meta and let it ride 5 miles from your store. You're answering a question that people probably have. Let's take the work boot side. What's the major difference between Red Wing and Thorogood or Keen? Oh, you could do three examples in one, right? And run that to people that work in the construction industries, again, on a 5 mile radius of your store. Let it ride. Press the boost button and let it go. I think it's in the reason these videos, I love this style, is because anybody can do them. They don't take a high setup. You're not putting all these effects in them and all this stuff. You're
Yeah.
just answering questions. And it's actually valuable information that, like, people are like, they're not just trying to sell me something. I've always wondered, yeah, what's the difference between Red Wing and Keen? I've worn Red Wing for 10 years. But I have some of my friends wear Keen. But what is the key differences? Oh, it's the toe, it's the bed, whatever, right? So I think it's just that gives people a lot of content ideas as well. I mean, every single time we talk about video, Kody, like, what are the ideas I should do for video?
Yeah.
You read that book. This is what it will tell you to do. I'll give you 50 ideas right here. Write down, when people walk into your store, the 50 most asked questions. If you're a business owner, you could probably do that in 10 minutes. I know when we
Yeah.
started creating this content for Omni, I did it and I used some of my team. There's a hack for you. Use your team, right? The fitters,
For sure.
people like maybe you know, furbishing, purposing work boots and stuff like that, resoling and stuff. Like, there you
Mhm.
go. Like, you could ask them, like, what are people asking if they get asked questions? So use your team and just think of 50 questions that people ask on the floor about all these ranges of topics, from cost to brands to functionality, of the different categories of footwear,
Yeah.
and just create videos based on those questions. And you'll have dozens of videos running in that 5 mile radius. So let's break it from the top. 5 mile radius on Meta, let's say, because Meta is the easiest. Google is a little bit complex on your own, but Meta is
Yeah.
very, very easy in Instagram. So Meta, 5 mile radius of your store, make 5 videos answering the 5 most popular questions that your customers ask when they run in the door. Click boost on each one of those. Put $150. So what is that? 750 total on the budget, and let it ride for a month and just see what it gets you. You'll probably be pretty shocked, because this is the final thing I'll say. And the thing that I love about this book, and I'm not going to steal it from him. It's Marcus Sheridan. He said this in the book. Taya, as it's kind of short for, allows you to become the king or queen of your space. Kind of stealing Dean Jackson's, the
Yeah.
owning that 5 mile.
Mhm.
And because this is the thing that I love about video, that it's done for these two clients in a massive way. People are going to come in and they're going to be like, I've seen you, right? Where in a graphic, if you just have a picture of a shoe, there's no branding, right? There's no personality to that. So Taya allows you to put, and they ask you answer, allows you to put a lot of personality in your content as well.
I love it. And, one of the things that I do for our shoe stores is I am front stage,
Yeah,
from
you
that
are. I've
perspective.
seen it.
I do a lot of videos and
Yeah.
I'm told what to do. My person who's in charge of marketing says, Pete, and she doesn't love getting on camera. And she says, Pete, can you do this, this, and this? I'm like, sure. But I'm going to start answering some more questions after
Yeah.
this conversation, Kody, because it's
Yeah.
one of the things that we've done some in the past, like how do you keep care of Blundstone boots and
Sure.
some of that sort of stuff. But it's not in our regular rhythm more
Yeah.
so than it's been one of the things we've just done occasionally. But I think answering a question every time I do a block of videos, or a couple of questions every time I do a block of videos with intention, answering of the questions is going to be part of the marketing strategy, I think, is what we can adopt and use. And then, she'll
Yeah.
just say, hey, answer this and answer that. And
Yeah.
I'm happy being front stage. I don't want to do the backstage stuff.
Well, it's
All
really,
of that. And I mean, I just think, one of the things that a lot of small business owners, in a lot of cases, they don't mind being the front stage person, but they don't even know what to talk about half the time. And this is one of the things that stops them from actually going ahead and clicking record, is the fact that, oh, well, I've already done, what's new in Keen, or what's new in Burke, or what's new in blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Like, it's the middle of the season, nothing much new coming in. We've done a sale, one or two. Like, what do I do now? Well, now it's like, okay, pull out that list, hit Chat GPT for another 15, so that it's going to give you some other
Yes.
good ideas too, or one of the AIs to give you a few more ideas that might tweak something that you might be able to talk about. And
Yeah.
now you've got your list for the next batch on those days where you don't have something new coming in the door, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And you've got content, because I
Yeah.
think part of content, getting started, is halfway, done. And
For
it's
sure.
just that getting started for so many small business owners, like, I got stuff to receive. I got to, do payroll. I got to do all these different things that are
Yeah.
happening in the store. And I don't have time to think about the content that I'm going to have to do, and then do it, and then break it all down, and then post it, but if we can have all this sort of stuff, and you could do that list like you talked about, have 50 of them there, and pull off the three, it's already giving you the ideas. And now all you got to do is hit record.
And you sparked two things in my mind. I just want to say this too. Marcus Sheridan was a retailer. Now he does this book full time and all this stuff. He
Sure.
owned a, check this out. This is a crazy stat. He owned a pool and spa company. His Riverside Pool and Spas in Richmond, Virginia, it's somewhere in Virginia, is the most visited pool and spa website in the world, even more
Amazing.
than pool and spa manufacturers. So crazy, but he was a retailer, and it saved his business. Taya did. It was during 2008. And the second thing I'll say, and I promise I am not going to just try to sell people on our video services, but for us, because we don't even send this to clients, we have a 3-page template to dump into Chat GPT to think for ideas for us, that I basically read Taya, summarized it myself of like, these are the key things. And again, they ask you answer for Taya, by Marcus Sheridan. And basically it gives me those ideas. But the other thing it gives me is scripting for the video with the frameworks. Because one of the most important things, this is another, even if you don't email me up for that template, is your hook in social media is massively important. So you could start out by simply saying, have you ever wondered what the difference between Brooks and Hoka is? Well, we're going to tell you today, versus just going right in to be like, the Hoka Clifton, right? Like, no. People are wondering what the difference is between Hoka and Brooks, not just about Hoka, right? So probably the easiest way to think of content for a footwear retailer is comparing all of your brands against each other, because the consumer already is when they're looking on your website. So that's probably my one recommendation outside of those 50 questions, is think of your hook. Ask them a question. Hey, have you ever thought of, or, have you ever wondered, right? Like things like that. And then just compare different products.
I love it, man. I'm going to do it.
Love it. Love it.
You'll
I
see
can't
some
wait to see it. I was
Shootopia
to say, you'll
videos
see
with
it.
that happening.
I love it. No, I would love it, man. I mean, I'm hair on fire about it, because I've seen what it's done for these two clients. I mean, candidly, it's kind of blown me away. And for one of them in particular, it really, it really made the ownership team so much more involved in their business
I
from
love
a
it.
marketing perspective. They were
Yeah,
super
yeah.
involved in their business ops wise, but it got them more involved marketing wise because they just, to your point, they didn't know what to do before then. So now they do, and we're creating dozens of videos a month answering these questions. And here's, I can't help myself. Here's another hack. Look at the comments on all of your posts. You know, what are people asking in the comments? Use that as questions, or better yet, post something today and ask people to comment below the questions that they have about your store footwear, and just go answer those questions that people ask in the social media comments and call them out. It'll make them feel really good too.
We've talked about content. We've talked about all kinds of great things to bring people in the door, both in the store, that 5 mile radius,
Yep.
or whether it's online. And I appreciate all your words of wisdom. There's lots of
Yeah.
key takeaways here, Kody. If
Thanks,
people
man.
want to reach out to you and want to learn more about you and Omni, how
Yeah.
can they do that?
Yeah. Probably the easiest way is to go to our website, and right on the homepage there's a schedule a call, book a call with us, and it'll allow you to just book a call with our team, and would love to try to help in any of these three areas.
That's awesome, man. And we'll put in the show links as well the link for your Chat GPT offering there.
Yes, you know what I'll do? I'll just send you a PDF of it, Pete, and people can just download it right there if that's possible.
Cool.
You don't even have
Yeah.
to contact us. It's super helpful, and they can just dump it in with their questions, and it'll spit out like proper formats and scripting and ideas and stuff. So, yeah,
Awesome. That would be helpful not only for us, but for everybody listening. So
you got it.
thanks again, Kody. Look forward to seeing you at one of the shoe events in the near future.
Yes. Thanks.
And appreciate everything here today. Make it a
Yeah.
great day.